parking slip, please reach out to my colleagues on the first table here. And we are starting the last plenary, and with that, I'll hand it over to Ambika for a brief introduction, and then we'll start the plenary session. Ambika, over to you.
Thank you, Uday. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ambika Sharma. I'm the Managing Director for the US IBC at the US Chamber of Commerce. And it's my great privilege to be associated with this great event, which you have been attending since morning. This is the last session of the day, but I think it's the most exciting one because it's touching one of the core issues, that is women empowerment, which is really key to the growth of this session. Let me quickly give you the brief context of the session and the discussions we are going to take. The contribution of the women in the economic, social, and political sphere, as all will agree with me, is quite well known. Worldwide, women have been playing an extremely significant role in the socio-economic development of the countries and the regions. In fact, if we look at the global statistics, it reveals that empowering women could actually be instrumental in enhancing the connectivity and growth. And this exactly we are going to discuss on the panel. I'll just like to quote the figures. The World Economic Forum, which in its recent report, has categorically underlined that empowering women to participate in the global economy could actually lead to US $28 trillion in the growth in the GDP. And this is actually very relevant for the regional growth, which we have been discussing since morning. But unfortunately, this initiative has to be more robust in South Asia region, and with our eminent panelists, we are going to hear their views as to what they feel and what needs to be done to encourage the same. The economic empowerment of the women in the part is, I won't say it's completely neglected, it's not been the focus. While this whole region can boast of the young demographies, growing working age population, but we are unable to use that to the best of possible extent. Moreover, the lack of women economic empowerment is constraining them to participate in spearheading many national and intra-regional agenda. This could be one of the reasons for the limited regional connectivity, low levels of intra-regional trade, and restricted flow of commerce. And I could get the sense of it when I was talking to all the eminent panelists just before the start of the session. These are some of our thoughts, and I'm very honored today to share the stage with some of the prominent women entrepreneurs from the region who have excelled in their field and are here today to share their perspective. We have amongst us two women achievers from the northeast part of India, Ms. Sanjita Koijam, founder of Manipur Creation Society. She's an inspiration in herself. Can I request you to stand up? We have Ms. Jahnabi Phookan, who is the founder and director of Jungle Travels, a travel house organizing wildlife and birding tours, plus many more things. She is the first national vice president of the Fickies Ladies Organization from Northeast. Welcome, ma'am. We have with us Ms. Cheryl A. Williams, who is the director program of USAID. Ma'am. We also have amongst us a leading women entrepreneur from Bangladesh, Ms. Selima Ahmad, who is the president of Bangladesh Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I welcome you all to this interaction, and we quickly move to the panel discussions. Thank you. Let me start with Sanjita. Sanjita, you are from Northeast, and the Northeast region, you know, is quite vital from the point of view of connectivity. What is your perspective with respect to the economic empowerment of the women in the region, particularly in the Northeast? Yeah, okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today's plenary is conducted to discuss various aspects of women's economic empowerment in a regional context, how women economic empowerment contributes to regional integrations, I, as one of the speakers of today's plenary, welcome you all to this event and sincerely hope to make this plenary a fruitful one for everyone present here by our active participation. As I am going to talk about connectivity, first of all, let me just focus on these things. That is, I'll just highlight you about something. That is, after the devastating partition of 1947, the Northeast India, which was a gateway of commerce and culture that linked India to the East and Southeast Asia, lost its market, transit routes and arteries of communication and Interpol. But recently, with opening of India-Myanmar, international border and the integrated checkposts at More on the 8th August 2018, the belief has come true. What we have been believing that we will progress, it has again come true. It is after 71 years that the process of reconnection of transit routes and arteries of communication works is in progress. Coming back again, I would like to mention, if we are going to talk about Trans-Asian Highway, then as we all know, the status of Trans-Asian Highway and the connectivity prospect of it in the Northeast region of India, which is also considered to be India's gateway to the fast developing ASEAN region. It does not only mean intensification of connection between Southeast Asia and Northeast India in terms of trade and commerce, but also in terms of peoples and idea, which in turn will imply the return of the past and the reawakening of centuries-old ties, especially between Manipur, Assam, and Myanmar. But to deal with this tide of development, we need to prepare ourselves to thousands. We need to deal. What we need to deal is withstand the pressure of this tide and extract the best out of it for our society and many more generations to come. As I said, if we have to deal with this, first of all, what we have to do is certain kind of groundwork of empowering the public at large and women to be precise. If it is not done in time for the development of the region, then, if at all, Trans-Asian connectivity will only remain as a connectivity tools or a mechanism. And especially our region, our northeastern region will always remain as a region or a bridge of these two vibrant economies, that is East-West corridor and Southeast Asian countries. So my submission will be, I would like to start small thing and try to empower women to the best of our ability through public, private, as well as public-private partnership. This is the only way we can bring changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjita, for giving a very brief perspective of the region and your ideas. We'll come to several specific questions later. I move on to Jahnabi. I think to start with, I would like to ask you a question, being the National Vice President of FICCI. What has FICCI Flow, I'll say, what has been your experience and how do you feel the empowerment of women in general for the country means and of course for the region?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ambika, for your question. Thank you all for being here and still awake after lunch. We would, as a worker in FICCI Flow, I'm here as the National Vice President now. We are a 6,000 strong women's body, and I thought I would tell you a bit about what we find is the status of women in the economic terms in India. So our figures show that India today ranks 120 among 131 countries in the female labor force participation rates. We are, considering our population, we have a long way to go. And we find that at 17% of the GDP, the economic contribution of the Indian woman is less than half the global average. It compares unfavorably to 40% in China. I think about what Christine Lagarde had said of IMF, that when women can do better, economies do better. And I remember her speech when she's spoken about if females were working in the same proportion as the men, the level of GDP would be up 27% in a country like India, but also up 9% in Japan and up 5% in the United States. It's not just a moral issue, not just a philosophical issue. It just makes economic sense. So I think our government of India has finally taken cognizance of this, that yes, women need a level playing field and they need help, and the government is trying in India. We find that the government of India's Mudra scheme, for instance, which is supporting micro and small enterprises and trying to do direct transfers into women's pockets under the Jan Dhan Yojana, is seeking to empower women. The government is trying, and we in the private sector would also like to hold hands with the government and walk forward on this. We find, and the studies around the world have shown, that there's social benefits to empowering women. Women will spend 90% of their income on their families. And the more economically empowered they are, that would help our education, that will boost children's health, that will boost the entire nation. So when you educate a woman, you empower women, you're empowering the nation. So that is where we find that we have such a strong role to play, and we need a voice that matters. Women have to come forward more on this. So it's estimated in India, for instance, that more than half of India's women don't have cell phones, and 80% don't use them to connect to the internet. So if as women, as the men had cell phones in the country, this would globally add $17 billion to the phone companies on the next 5 years. And globally, women make and influence 80% of the buying decisions. So that is another tremendous, that would have been a boost for India. So it's the women's world, finally, and we have to come and take some claim on it. So this, for our government, we find that they have the economic survey of 2017-18, and they have actually come up and spoken about the promotion of women's rights. They've spoken about the problems we have in India about the violence against women that is there, but they've tried to highlight the importance of women empowerment. There are lots of positives which has come out in the economic survey, which I would like to share with you, that the survey shows that the percentage of educated women have gone up from 59% in 2005 to 72% in 2016. Yet though the number of educated women have gone up, the number of employed women have gone down. So those are figures they're still examining. And where the employment of women in the workforce has sadly declined. It declined from 36% in 2006 to 24% of what it is now. And that about 66% of our women are taking unpaid work, though they have increased education levels. Those are facts that the government is examining, we all need to examine, and try to rectify the situation. And the other plus points are that there's been an increase in women who earn equally or even more than their husbands now, from 21% in, again, 2006 to about 42.8% in 2016. So the percentage of women have risen from non-manual jobs from 18% to 28%. So those are the positives. And the other side is when we talk about entrepreneurship. In India, according to the Global Entrepreneurship Development Institute, India is the last 5 among the 30 countries on the status of women entrepreneurs. In the MSME sector in India as a whole, 86% of units are owned by males, where women own only about 13.7%. And however, in the Northeast, where I come from, the scenario is better, with 19% of the MSMEs being owned by women. So our area has, there's been a lot of micro level where women have sustained themselves, and for that, I think we can hold our heads high. But where we come from, it's a very landlocked part of the country, where we'll talk later about the transborder issues that we are trying to rectify, and where we come from, that's where the government is looking at the Act East policy, and that I think it was going to be where we can come forward strongly and make a mark in the world. We'll take it up later on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving a very broader perspective. We'll come to the very specific issues. I now move to you, Ms. Williams. Considering your global experience in working with developing and emerging countries, I would just like to ask, what's your take on gender equality and women empowerment, especially in the context of development?
Good afternoon, everyone. In my 25 years or more working with USAID in North Africa, Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and now South Asia, this country and others, what I have found is that there are a lot of similarities. One of the ways that we all need to recognize that we're going to address the issue of women's empowerment and gender equality is when we have the active support, involvement, participation of men. Women can't do this alone, and where women have advanced, where young girls have advanced, it's been because of their brothers, their fathers, their husbands, their sons, and so this is something that all of us are involved in. One of the other things I've noticed, and this varies across culture, but again, there are some similarities, is that to advance women's issues and to empower women, we need to change some of the attitudes and perception of what young girls and women can do. There are things that hold true, and there's things that we respect as a development organization across cultures, but there are also behaviors that aren't based on any real sound reason, and we all need to work past those. To say that a young girl cannot be a doctor or cannot be an engineer, or that she should stay at home and help the family and put the son through school because he's likely to be smarter or better, just leaves over half the population behind. And leaving half the population behind who aren't actively engaged in the economic growth and economic movement of any country means that the country's never going to prosper or move ahead as much as it could. One of the things that my ambassador, Ambassador Juster, mentioned in his speech this morning is that free movement of people is equally as important as the movement of goods or the exchange of electric power. And I interpret free movement of people not just to be of trade, but free movement of people should also include the ability of young girls and women to have mentoring, to have support, the same as young men frequently do because of the network and the organizations that men have to support young men, to give young girls graduating from university the opportunity to create their own businesses or to find jobs in the public and private sector. Because a lot of the times these positions and opportunities do take place because of informal networking. And if young girls are not part of those networks and don't have the contacts in the private or public sector, there are just going to be opportunities that they're not going to know about and they're going to miss out on. What I think I'll do is I'll wait and talk a little bit later about what I think we can do and what USAID is already doing to advance women's empowerment and gender equality, and then turn it over to my next colleague to hear what she has to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your insights. I now move to Selima. You have been leading the women chapter of the Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce. You are a successful entrepreneur, and you are also the vice chair of the SWEC, which is looking at the women empowerment issues in the SAARC region. How do you think the women empowerment status is right now in the region, and what can be done to improve that?
Thank you, Ambika. Let me first thank CARTS and USMSC Bangladesh for, putting me here. I always believe that women's economic empowerment is the capacity to participate. And while sitting here, I was thinking when you asked me this question, is that we have the capacity, all the colleagues who are sitting here and all the women who are participating here. In one of the panel, we had earlier in 3 of the panels, it was all men. And here also, there could be men and women talking about our issues. So we actually have the capacity to participate, but we are not given that opportunity. So the capacity and opportunities are fighting with each other, and we don't get the opportunity. And the second one is, which I always believe, that contribute and getting benefits from the growth process. Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, all this SAARC region, we are growing. We are economically growing, our population is growing, our GDP is growing. But we have something in common, especially for women, is mostly they are manufacturers. Mostly they are dealing with the traditional goods. And each country has demand of that product. The Indian products has great demand in other SAARC countries. Bangladesh, sheep products have great. So it's vice versa. But the problem is that getting visa is an issue. The trust is not there. Terrorism is one of the things. Restriction in product, tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers. And then the final thing is the customs point. How much gender-friendly is all the customs point? Whether a woman exporter could stay or have a proper safety in one of the custom point if she need to stay in a hotel in that area. So the common ground is there, but the restrictions are there. So if you'd like to talk about the economic empowerment, then you see the capacity and the participation has a conflict. And being into that growth process, that gender-friendly perspective or the aspect is not there. So we are moving forward, nothing to be frustrated. But the policymakers need to see that how we can bring women into the mainstream. And that should start from this event. I should ask Katz that every time, whenever you have this sort of events, please put women in all the plenary, because that gender perspective things come out. Because whenever you're talking about any of the issues, but one of the issues in every aspect, we have something to say, which is from our perspective, and we need to start that, and that will bring women's economic empowerment in this region. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think what you very nicely underlined is that the gender-inclusive trade facilitation will actually boost the trade and commerce in the region. Jahnabi, moving to you, would you like to talk about the trans-border issues from your perspective? Like, what would you like to highlight in terms of the region?
My colleague here, Selima, has put up a very valid point, which we all share. I think all of us are common in taking up what she said. From my point of view, from all of us, I think a way forward in where we're talking about trade, inter-regional trade, the trans-border trade from where we come from in the Northeast, we should, and then there's so many organizations which are involved. There's BBIN, there's SAARC, there's so many other, BIMSTEC. Said what I would moot is that we should form maybe a BBN or a SAARC, a women's council of our own. I think we should do that. Start with the private sector ourselves or engage with the government. If all the government bodies and all these separate bodies which are dealing with trade, they would have a strong women's participation, a separate women's sort of a forum, which we should make a think tank of our own and put it forward to the government. Something needs to be done on this. I think from FICCI Flow as an organization to which I belong, we would also moot that it's very important that we reach out to our counterparts in these countries, if they have their women's body as such, and take these common goals forward. Maybe we also think that the Ministry of Commerce or the export promotion agencies which promote trade would work towards trade among the women in these countries, BBN or SAARC, BIMSTEC, and where our entrepreneurs are concerned. So we are at a sort of a privileged level that we've been able to, if we do trade, like for my since I'm from the river cruising, our company had pioneered the long distance river cruising in the country. With that opportunity, we are working closely with Japan, for instance. We have Japanese counterparts who have been promoting our cruises. And some years ago, the Brahmaputra cruise was mooted as the #1 destination for Japan because a Japanese company came forward to promote it. So those are maybe the regional activities we've gone in a private way. There's been no government intervention. Now that there's a very close link with India, Japan, I can see very exciting days ahead. And now that I'm sitting at the FICCI floor in the Presidium, I have been invited from Japan to talk on entrepreneurship. The Japan government is encouraging this, and they want to have an India-Japan women's initiative on this. So those are very positive news. And I wish each country in the ASEAN region would also take this forward. We, from India, should work closely with Bangladesh, with Bhutan, Nepal, and the Northeast, and take this forward. And maybe, carve our own paths and take it forward from there. That would be a way out. And for the women we represent, I would moot more like gender-sensitive regional trade policies, maybe more educating of the women, have more summits, more workshops for the women, so they know about the procedural nightmares we all know about, so which is a deterrent even for us. So at the grassroots level, it's simply not happening. When we have been studying what's been happening with the trans-border in the Northeast, and it really hasn't gone beyond what we call the suitcase trade, the very small, informal, non-formal way of doing business. I've been looking at the figures in the Northeast, and I find there are just 2 registered women exporters who've actually done some sort of work. One is a lady from Nagaland who has sent made cane furniture to Nepal. The other is a lady from Meghalaya who has exported boulders and coal to Bangladesh. So that is the state of affairs now.
I think what you are referring to is the role of the governing institutions to be more women-friendly. Would you like to share some perspective from the USAID's point of view?
One thing that comes to mind that touches on what my colleague just mentioned that a lot of people are not aware of is there are women who are playing a role in the economic trade internally and regionally in the country, but within the region in South Asia as well as in other parts of the world, a lot of that takes place in the informal sector. And what we need to do is we need to make sure we can help to provide revisions or changes to international, regional policies, protocols, and legislation that makes it easier for women to play a role in the formal sector. But that alone is not enough. A lot of these women are playing a role in that sector because they don't have the information they need on how they can formalize their business. They don't have access to capital, and then once those businesses are set up, they often don't have the mentoring to keep those businesses going, to realize what's changing in the marketplace, how they should provide public policy, how they should advertise, how they could network with other businesses where there may be opportunities to provide their products in a new venue, in a new part of the country because there's a demand, but yet again, due to a lack of information, they're not aware of it. So there's a lot that USA tries to do with women in the informal sector, but even before we all get to be grown men and women, there's a role for us to play reaching out to young girls. There's a role, again, I get back to keeping young girls in school. The stigma of menstruation keeps young girls out of school more than it should. And we need to get past that because it's just a healthy part of a woman's life. And so the fact that women and young girls may feel like they have to leave their office, workplace, or stay out of school means that a young girl who basically may be the star pupil may miss out on a couple of days of school when preparatory work for their exams is taking place. So in development, we tend to look at things in the long range while we're here talking about some very real issues that affect and impact women's ability to engage in regional trade. We need to look at the next generation or two that's coming up behind us and seeing what we can do to open these doors and make it easier for them to play this role.
Thank you very much. Selima, you have been associated with a similar body which is just doing a very focused work on the women empowerment through SWEC channel. Would you like to share your thoughts with the audience? Do you see that as the most effective platform, or we need to do something more there? So would you like to share your perspective there?
You see, bilateral and regional trade could actually bring women entrepreneurs who are into the backward situation to come move forward. And when you talk about poverty, it always comes to the women. So if you want to reduce poverty, it is entrepreneurship through which women as poverty and the economic situation can be changed. And for that, that capacity building is important. The conversion of currencies, the documentation, opening LCs, knowing the banks, the channels, that knowledge is important. And for that, you know, institution like chambers, women's organization, or SWEC, we need to come forward more building that capacity. And this sort of dialogue actually enhances the leaders to talk about these issues. One of the aspects which we all are talking about the border hut, and we know that in border hut so many women are participating, but it's very in a small way. It's only into the women who are residing in that area. How we can improve that situation, how BBIN could be more effective, how the frustration the SARC leaders has, you know, I was a EC member of SARC chamber, and I have seen that how much frustration we have, the political leaders, when they decide to cancel their meeting. Now, we also had to cancel our SARC meeting. So, the politics plays such an important role where we, the business people, or we, the private sector, have different perspective, but because of the political scenario or the political perspective, we are affected. So how we can solve that situation? And when in the broader regime, these are a problem for a single woman or a single, the women's group, they find it much more difficult. So, we actually need to have more exposure, more SARC women trade fairs, more connectivity. We are going to have a SARC EC meeting in Chennai, you know, I think next week. Our friend from Pakistan couldn't attend because she is not going to get the visa. So these are such small things, you know, getting a US visa, you can always get a 5-year visa. But having an Indian visa is so tough, even for Bangladeshis is so tough nowadays. So how we can participate? So small things are really making it a very big issues. So the participation is very much needed because we know from the SWEC, mentoring me personally with the Center for International Private Enterprise with all the SARC countries, we know that so many policies has been developed or has been achieved by one of the countries which we can transfer to other countries, sharing these stories with each of the countries, we could bring benefit. But sitting together has becoming a problem. Or any meeting we have to go to Nepal because you don't need any visas. Coming to India is a problem. Going to Pakistan, if you go to Pakistan, India doesn't give you a visa. If you want to get a US visa, they will say, why you have been to Pakistan? So you are either a terrorist or something like that. And this is happening. So it's difficult, you know, when we have that issue. So either go to Sri Lanka or go to Nepal. Going to Bangladesh is also now is another problem. There is so many terrorism issues. So I don't know, it's very, very frustrating, but we women are actually meeting, sitting, talking. That is the best part, and participating into the growth process. But we want to see that everyone includes us. You know, each countries are working for SDG, and SDG is sustainable. SDG is something we really want to see that women participates equally. And if we, the SARC region, don't allow this participation of women equally, then the SDG will never be achieved. So we have to work from now.
Thank you very much, Sanjita. Coming over to you from the Northeast perspective, would you like to highlight, because we hear a lot of work being done for the women empowerment, skilling in Northeast, would you like to touch upon that, your experience? You have been in textiles for some time.
Um, I run a society called Manipur Creations, and I have been empowering more than 2,000 women. And in that, you know, what problem I face is, like 80% of population is, Manipur population is dominated by hill areas only. While we, so what happened is, most of the destitute women are confined in the hill areas. Right. Okay, so like I have to find out also, what I do is I have to find out who are the most destitute women. Because what I do is I prioritize only the destitute women. Because whatever project I have been doing is funded by private bodies only. Sure. Okay, so mainly what I do is after finding out the destitute women properly, I skill them. We are running one more garment factory that is called Manipuri Creations. We skill those destitute women in that garment factory, and after that, they are being empowered. Because how we empower them is like, they are from such remote area that they cannot be, in touch with us every now and then, even though they are empowered also. So we make it in such a way that it gets sustained. The policy gets sustained, okay. So in every of the district, wherever we have empowered those women, we kept an outlet, we open an outlet, and through that outlet only the communication is proceeded.
Thank you. So it's very, very impressive. Now we move to some questions which you can see on the slide.com in front of you from the audience. And the first question is, what are some of the suggestions to increase participation of women traders in South Asia? One of you would like to, I think this, you have touched upon this, but would one of you like to answer that? Selima, any ideas on that?
For participation as a traders, the customs point is very important. Having a gender-friendly environment in that area is very important. Knowledge of documentation is important. Visa process need to be much more easier for the traders. And knowing the tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers are important. On the other hand, the government actually should subsidize the women traders when they are participating in the regional trade fair, because sometimes for a new entrepreneur it's expensive, and the traders sometimes doesn't know. But ultimately it's very important that having a proper infrastructure for women traders and having logistics for the women traders.
Okay, thank you. I think there is a question for Sangeeta. What's the competition scale that a women-owned business face in South Asia? Any major challenges would you like to highlight? Perhaps you may like to. You can see the last question. The major challenges, if you have to identify the challenges, there has been a lot of reference to the challenges.
Well, shall I just take it up since we are from the northeast?
Yeah.
At the border levels?
Yes. Yeah.
Because when we're talking about the trans-border trade, and where we in the northeast have been landlocked for so long, and the government is encouraging more trans-border outlets now. We were just looking at some figures, and they have registered some of the trade, they call it the trade centers, where there's been licensing of the vendors. There are two of them. One is in the Tripura, Bangladesh one, where Kamal Sagar and Srinagar, another two at Kalai Chera and Balat, which is Meghalaya to Bangladesh. And we were looking at the figures for women. Now we have the number of licensed vendors, the sellers. There were some 22 men, women none, no sellers. In the other Srinagar part, 27 men, no women. In the Meghalaya border, registered licensed sellers, 25 men, 1 woman. And in the Balat area, 25 men, 8 women. And where the buyers are concerned, we have a larger number of buyers, but very few sellers, as you can see. So buyers are some 1,000 men in the Tripura side, 300 women in the, in the Tripura side, but only 300 registered. And in the Meghalaya side, some 26 women. So that is a scenario. So why is it that the women are being deterred at the border trade activity? We find that it's been also largely to do with the selection process for the granting of the licenses. We find that the process is very opaque, and in some hearts, it's been the same list of vendors and vendees from the beginning. There's been no new changes, and I think it's pretty much a set pattern that new entries are not getting a chance. For those who don't know, don't have the information, will never get it, because we need more transparency, which has to yet happen. Secondly, the infrastructure deficit. The physical connectivity to these huts are extremely poor. Access roads are worse. By the time you get your goods there, and it's a worse condition during our monsoons of the Northeast. So, and people actually have, and where the women are concerned, there are no separate toilets. I mean, the simple thing like a toilets or infrastructure for women simply does not exist. Some, they don't even have electricity. So it's a huge deterrent for any enterprising women to go out there and trade. Then as for the mobile and the internet connectivity, it's very poor, not even been able to do much. So women are not being able to go and work in those challenging circumstances. We've also seen that the banking facilities are practically non-existent. And this management has put women in a vulnerable position because they have to depend on the men, where they use an informal network. Most of it's a barter system. Otherwise, the banking is being held in men's hands. And there are very few female officers manning the post. It's mainly males, and that's always been a disadvantage. And that's why we find that the informal trade has remained informal. These are the people have just transported goods for them. They haven't gone beyond suitcases, what I said. They travel practically on rickshaws and buses, and also by foot. So unless these situations is rectified, our trans-border trade is not going to take off.
Yeah, before we move on to Cheryl, there's a question for you. Selima, would you like to give your views on the access to finance? Because there has been, you touched upon the issue of security. Do you think, what are your views on better access to finance in this region?
Access to finance is always a issue for especially small entrepreneurs. And for Bangladesh, we have a separate policies for women entrepreneurs. But again, getting that access is difficult. I'm seeing one of the question where it's written, women-owned businesses rarely succeed in government procurement. So your secret for succeeding in logistics sector. I remember I went to one of the policy makers for actually putting sort of a percentage for the public procurement. I did lots of lobbying, but he says, no, it's not possible. But I believe that we need to have quotas for public procurement, because if we don't have quotas, it's getting into that procurement is difficult, because lots of, I should not say, but the corruptions, the nepotism is there. So for women, it's very difficult to get into that process. Still, we don't have that, that sort of quota system.
Thank you. Cheryl, there is a question for you. You can read it on the screen. That says that what has been US government public procurement policy to encourage women business?
Okay. Well, my colleague Selima just touched on some of the same things that Al mentioned, which is that the US government procurement policies, it does encourage procurement that US government agencies use women-owned businesses to the extent possible. And what makes that attractive is because there is usually a shorter, more direct procurement process. So that means the acquisition of your goods and services is usually a lot shorter. There is also another approach that we use, and that's when we're doing larger procurements where there are opportunities for subcontracts. In the evaluation criteria, we often encourage, we can't require, but we often encourage the larger businesses to look at and consider women-owned businesses as their subcontractors. And again, both of these are approaches that are encouraging U.S. procurement officials and program officers and project managers to consider other businesses than the typical businesses that we all know about that have better marketing, better outreach, that are more well-known, because there are a lot of businesses, whether they're women-owned or vet-owned, that have the capacity and skills. We just have to remember to look for them and use them. And so through our procurement policies, there are a couple of different ways that U.S. government agencies are encouraged to use these services and these other businesses.
Thank you. I see one question on the venture capital in South Asia to begin with. From the flows perspective, how do you see the different schemes of the government which have been put in place for the startup women entrepreneurship? Would you like to highlight something as your experience? And is Flow taking up this issue?
I think with the Flow, we have taken cognizance of this and how we will have to form this, the Women's Chamber of Commerce. I understand that we already have an ASEAN Women's Chamber and a SHWEC, but there, I think our distribution and a dissemination of knowledge hasn't been adequate, and we are going to work towards it. I will take it up with our organization to strengthen our hands further, because this simply cannot go on at the government levels. But on a very private note, I would just like to add here that among the worries that we've seen about the cross-border and other hurdles, there are positive stories from our region which I would like to share, say in the e-commerce and the IT sector, in the private sector, with nothing to do with the government, is the way maybe we should go forward. I have my friend from Bangladesh who is doing business on her own with Bhutan, with the government of Bhutan, with the government of Nepal. So those are trans-border, which has happened, cross-border on the individual, the private sectors. My own sister from the IT sector in Assam, she's bid and won a contract, and she works for Cambodia for her IT solutions, IT-enabled services. So services like that, which is e-commerce and IT, I think you can just jump borders and go. But for the others, for us, say in tourism, there's also going to be a lot of exchanges of ideas, and we explore our own sort of regional dynamics, and once the sort of efforts that the government has put into place for the Northeast is with the road connectivity, the inland water transport connectivity, for instance. This time it's been a momentous time for us when India and Bangladesh have finalized that the river cruising route from Calcutta to Dhaka to Guwahati all the way to Jorhat in Upper Assam. That will open up this area even more. My company in 2003, when we pioneered long-distance river cruising, had taken this up, that the government of Bangladesh would not allow passengers on the cruise. But now that has come through after 15 years. So this will open up a whole new vista in tourism. And tourism is not a private business. It is something which involves communities to a very, very large extent. And we in the Northeast think it's a very sustainable way to go forward. That is going to open up doors. That'll be the water connectivity. Air connectivity is happening in a very great way, which Assam government had this summit that they put up called the Advantage Assam, and they invited a lot of investments into the state. We find Bhutan Airlines has been supporting Assam in directed connectivity, Assam to Singapore, Guwahati to Singapore, Paro, Guwahati, Singapore, and we welcome, and we've asked for help from all the other countries to come forward and connect, because Assam is going to be the gateway. Bangladesh has put up its consulate in Guwahati, and so has Bhutan. And with that, we think the time will come when it'll be Northeast and the rest of as the gateway to Southeast Asia.
Thank you so much. Are there any more questions from the audience? No, I think most of them have reflected on the slide.
Thank you very much. I'm Luna Shamshuddova from Bangladesh, and I am an IT entrepreneur. Looking at the agenda and the plenary and everything, we are looking at how to jump regionally into a global economy. And what we are looking at is global economy is now digital economy. But where are the women? Where there are simply, we do not see anything here in our kind of these 2 days where the women should be. Women are on the wrong side of the digital skills gap. And the inclusion of women is most important now at this today when we're talking about regional connectivity. There's a paradigm shift on how jobs are created and how enterprises are created. There's certainly, we are on the future of works, we're looking at something which women are not to be found. Impact of increasing digitalization of all jobs will impact women disproportionately. And if you're looking at the artificial intelligence and other technology developments, we need to upskill their skills. If you're looking at the gender gap in technology, and women, we are at a competitive disadvantage as well. Technology, I think, is key, the answer to our potential to be an equalizer. And this is where we probably need to focus. And I think one of the questions that I do work on public procurement, and I think you mentioned me, yes, but I do also bid for overseas jobs. I do not feel, Ms. Ahmed, I think having a quota would be disadvantage to us because a quota would really eliminate women from participating in large jobs, large government procurement. From my own experience of working in government in all these countries. Thank you.
Anybody would like to respond on this? Or that's fine. Any other question? Because we are just coming to the close of the session.
I'm so sorry. I think people who know me must be really fed up of me, But I'm just wondering, like when we're talking about women and, we're forgetting the masses, the primary producers. Somehow or the other, I don't know, somewhere seems to be something going wrong, We have to understand that there's so much of potential. No one is talking about agribusiness. Agribusiness.
Agribusiness. No, she mentioned about it.
Yeah.
You did?
We've not talked about specific businesses. I mean, we were not asked about verticals of business. Where we come from in Northeast, we can talk agribusiness and a host of other businesses. But we were not asked that question.
No, but we need to talk about it. We don't need to be asked.
Sure. I mean,
we must talk about it because we
if
really
you ask the
mean
question, we will talk about it. I don't think that was in the purview of this.
Jahnabi,
yes.
We need to speak up.
Sure. I told you we should have that woman's body and let's go for it.
You should have waited till we end, because I was going to talk about how fruits of Bhutan could be raw materials for Bangladeshi juice producer, but you didn't wait it for that.
Hello. Yeah.
That's the last question. Yeah, she wanted to respond.
So let me, allow me to give you an example of what USAID does using transferring Indian technology and expertise to other countries in the region. We have one project that recently ended that took Indian technology and expertise and transferred it to farmers in Nepal to increase ag productivity and their incomes. And over 74% of the participants of this project were women. And so because of the increase of women in the ag sector, as men migrate to urban areas or as they go to other countries in the region, that shift is happening. So our assistance is focused more on women, not just in South Asia in the ag sector, but in other parts of the world. So we're very aware about the need to support agriculture, whether it's because of nutrition, malnutrition, and the fact that women are playing a greater role in it. But again, as my colleague said, we weren't asked to focus on a specific issue, but you're on target. And the woman who talked about digital technology and the need for women to have greater skills and capacity to engage in the changes in the private sector that rely more on IT-related skills. We need to address those on the behalf of women who are currently working in the economy, but again, at college students and high school students as well.
Hi, I'm Radhesham Moinam. I'm from Manipur Chamber of Commerce from Imphal. In the context of the theme right now we are having about empowerment of women in the cross-border trade, I'd like to talk in the context of two dynamics in the Northeast. One, as Sanjita has pointed out, after 71 years, the international border which connects the ASEAN with Indian subcontinent, about 23% of the world population is in the Indian subcontinent, and 21% in the CLMVT and China. And there's a place called More, which is the only gateway, the land gateway will connect these two mammoth regions of the market. That's number one. Number two, the dynamics of the woman, talking about the woman empowerment, Northeast is a little different from the mainland India, we should say, because the customs, there's no dowry system in the Northeast. The women are more open, and there are a lot of women who come up in entrepreneurship because of the liberty. The education level is as high as man. There's not much of a difference between the education level of a woman and a man in the Northeast. Meghalaya is a matriarchal society. So that way, in these two contexts, what we see is that, for example, in Manipur, I had the State Chamber of Commerce, Manipur Chamber of Commerce, and it's the apex body there. And we've been trying to contact, in fact, Kutch was there a month ago, and Kutch will be also organizing a woman empowerment a workshop in Manipur in January to do with linkage with export. What we see is that when we try to actually go and get the woman entrepreneurs, actually, they say, yes, we have just formed a Manipur Women Entrepreneurship Association, about 15 or 20 members, but they're not active as such. In the same way, we need a lot of states in this Northeast state, which is actually bordering, it's in the trans-border, the different states. So I have a question for Ms. Phookan, is that FICCI, being from the woman, I'm sure the FICCI or ICC take up this initiative to link up the state-level Women Entrepreneurship Association, or rather give them inputs to organize and to form and have a platform for women entrepreneurship. I think they would go a long way, because nothing much has been done. So sad to say that even to talking about trade bodies in the Northeast also really, they're not organized or integrated as such, and we are doing that level where we had ICC summit, and we have proposed FICCI also to do something there. But apart from that, I think organizations like FICCI and ICC need to come forward and see how they can link up and support the women entrepreneurship associations in the Northeast, state by state, maybe district by district. But more than that, I think we need to have maybe a Northeast level women entrepreneurship association. That's a request to the FICCI Vice President here. Thank you very much.
I completely endorse what you had to say. And we think it's our responsibility from FICCI Flow.
Yes, absolutely.
Along with all the women of the Northeast, we must engage with. And also, we want to take this forward, that mentoring is a very important part of that. And I think our women lack that. Women in India, largely, and our women in the Northeast are even more, disadvantaged in that. So it's a great responsibility for FICCI Flow. And with our team, we want to take this forward, like we talked about inter-regional, which we already have working with the SAARC countries. We work with the ASEAN countries, but in our own backyard, we have to work very hard and engage with the women of the Northeast. And we will seek all your help of all the chambers. And I do suggest that we should be having Women's Chamber of Commerce in all our Northeast states very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Damo. It was really enlightening for me also. I skipped a lot of things I know, and I made a lot of mistakes also, and thank you for the particularity. Thank you so much. And yes, I'm also a member of Manipur Women's Entrepreneur. We do hell lots of work. We always gather once in a week, once in a month at least, and we do interact with each other, And like we focus mainly on the artisans. On the artisans, mainly we focus. The women entrepreneurs of Manipur, there are 30 to 35 of us enlisted. So we are working into it.
I think that will be the last question because we are just closing in time.
It's more of a comment than a question, but I think it's something for all of you to think of. So first of all, thank you for this really engaging panel. My question, or rather comment, is more around the safety of women and the fact that the northeastern part of India, and especially the BBIN region, faces one of the largest trafficking incidents of women, and they're rendered more and more vulnerable. So I think as a point to sort of take forward would be, how does this collaboration and this organization that we're proposing really work towards ensuring that women are safe, they're not trafficked, and we actually reduce these vulnerabilities of women as well at a larger scale. Thank you.
So I think with this we come to the close of this session, and we must give a hand to our distinguished panelists who have very eloquently given their perspective, shared their thoughts. Let's give them a big hand. And in this free flow of discussions, I know the time was very short. There are very important and noteworthy takeaways, and I'm sure both Cuts and Fiki have taken note of this. And we are very confident that it is the right beginning, and very soon this will become a reality in the South Asia. And with this, I thank you, all the audience, for your patient hearing, and wish the panelists very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambika, and all the panelists. I think it was extremely engaging and very interesting session. I think just one point, because it was a point which was raised from the floor, and I think there's a common question about the fact that the agenda was slightly skewed when it comes to gender in terms of having more women participation on the panel. As Cuts, I think we take cognizance of that, and we made all our attempts to have more women participation. We had certain dropouts, but I think nevertheless, the point is well noted. And with that, I request my colleagues to hand over the token of appreciation. Thank you once again. I think with that, we close today's session. Before we leave for the evening reception, which starts at 5:30, one important announcement that as Cuts, we would be producing a daily bulletin which would capture the discussions which happen throughout the day. It would be emailed to all the participants who have registered by the night, and you'll also get a copy tomorrow morning. And so with that, request all of you to join us for the reception at 5:30. Which is again at the same place where we had the lunch and the tea break, and hope to see all of you back tomorrow at 9 o'clock so we can start the sessions on time. Thank you once again.